Okay, thank you so much for joining us for this next panel. I'm really excited about this. These are a few winners from Venture Madness, the session that we just learned about how to apply. So these guys are going to get on board here and teach us about practically what they did to win the award and how it's benefited them and their company. Diana Vowels is going to introduce us to our panel. And then I'm going to be here moderating questions. So if you have any direct questions for anybody on the panel, go ahead and Huva, ask those questions. I'll pop back on when we have about 10 minutes left, and you'll get your questions answered live. If you hear anything you like, go ahead on social with hashtag PHX Startup Week. Take it away, Diana.
So great to be with everyone again. I know we had a lot of folks on the last session who were planning on joining in this one as well. I'm Diana Vowels. I am the chair of Invest Southwest, and we put on the Venture Madness Capital Conference every year. I'm very excited to have a panel of past winners from Venture Madness, some amazing entrepreneurs and leaders in our community, and they're going to share their stories of what they experienced at Venture Madness, any tips or tricks that they learned that they recommend to other entrepreneurs. And we're going to hear the stories about where they've taken their companies since Venture Madness. So with that, we have Gregg, Jamie, and Jacob on so far, and we expect to have Shruti joining us here pretty soon. So I'll go ahead and do introductions for the folks that we have here. First of all, we've got Gregg Scoresby, the CEO and founder of CampusLogic, and I'll have him tell his story here in a few minutes. Give him a wave, Gregg. Okay, Gregg's there, good. All right, we have Jamie Baxter, founder and CEO of Qwick, is here with us today. And we have Jacob Findlay, CEO of Fullbay and past winner. And I love the background. I see some big trucks there, so we want to hear that story. So I want to welcome our panelists today. Shruti from Televerde should be joining us soon, so we'll add her to the panel when she gets here. But let's go ahead and get started. All of these winners here. So Gregg won the competition, I believe, in 2015, and Jacob won the competition in 2018, and Jamie won in 2019. So they've all had some experience since the event and done some great things. But let's go back to the beginning. So I'd like each of the panelists to do a quick introduction and tell us what was your inspiration for your company. And I'll start with Gregg. Yeah, tell us a little bit about you and where CampusLogic came from and what inspired you to found the company.
So CampusLogic is a B2B SaaS company. So we sell a suite of software products to colleges, universities, so that they can make every financial interaction mobile, simple, personalized. And so we sell to colleges and sell software to them. Students don't know our brand, but we replace manual paper-based workflows with awesome software. I had some previous experience in the financial aid industry, and there were three things that occurred in 2010 that made me realize I ought to come back into the industry. I'd been away from the industry for a couple of years, and I'd started a couple previous companies. And one of those things was the absence of cloud, and the absence of mobile was another one in higher ed and financial aid. And then there were some regulatory changes also. And so that's really what motivated me, is I just saw that there's these environmental factors, the absence of cloud, the absence of mobile, these manual processes, and just past experience made me realize there's probably an opportunity to do something transformative in this vertical, and something that I know. And I also have a strong belief that education is the greatest path to social mobility. So enabling that through a better student experience was something that was important to me.
Great. And what year did you found the company?
2011. So right after that kind of thought in 2010. And then first we had a beta version of kind of a prototype in 2012 and a beta version in 2013. And a version that actually worked in 2014.
Great. So it's evolved. So you've been at this for about 10 years with different iterations. Great. So classic, find a problem and create a solution. So great to hear it. And I want to welcome Shruti. She has just joined us. Shruti, we're going through introductions. So I'll have you do the last introduction, then you can tell a little bit more about your story. So next, let's jump to Jamie. Tell us a little bit about you and what your inspiration for starting Qwick was.
So Qwick is a two-sided labor marketplace. Think about it as the gig economy for food and beverage. So on one side, we have hotels, catering companies, event venues, restaurants. On the other side, we have servers, bartenders, cooks, and dishwashers, and we pair them up to fill shifts in real time. A little about me, I've always been into technology and entrepreneurship. I started two companies when I was younger. One was a success and took that to exit. The other one, I learned a whole lot from. It was not a success, but after doing that, I went into becoming really an entrepreneur. So I worked for a company called Willis Towers Watson and launched 6 different products, all HR tech, B2B SaaS products, and took 6 different products from concept to revenue, grew the biggest one to 130 million ARR. Left there in early 2017 and decided to start Qwick. Got the idea really from my co-founder. He owns a bunch of hotels, and staffing those hotels was a really big issue. He had over 100% turnover and daily no calls, no shows. And he wanted a way to be able to, as he called it, to order staff the same way he ordered an Uber. He just wanted to go on an app and push a button and magic happened and people would show up and work. So we launched, we founded the company in late 2017, launched early 2018. And today we're in 8 markets with a little over 100,000 people on the platform.
So let's hear from Jacob. Jacob, tell us a little bit about you and the inspiration for Fullbay.
Jacob Findlay, founder of Fullbay. The inspiration for me came from starting out I started out as an accountant professionally. I worked for Deloitte and then Ernst & Young here in town. And when I decided that I couldn't take any more public accounting, I wasn't cut out for it, I landed at a medical records startup and really started to get interested in the idea of software as a tool for healing. And around that same time, I ran into this kind of hidden industry, commercial truck repair, and didn't think a lot of it. But as time went on, the kind of idea started to percolate of building a medical record for trucks. And so that's what we did. Started putting together a team and spent a year working in a truck shop to try to understand the industry better. And we launched, and we have done really well applying basically trying to apply the best ideas from the electronic medical records world to truck repair. And so far, so good. We're in all 50 states, all across Canada. We're in Australia, and going really well. As far as we can tell, we are by far the #1 platform for commercial truck shops out there. So,
great. So a medical record for the trucking industry. What is a medical record for the trucking industry? Tell us that.
Well, if you think about it, preventive medicine is the best medicine, right? It's the lowest cost, but it takes some kind of proactivity to do. So we all know that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And in commercial equipment, these big pieces of equipment that a lot of times we share freeways with, right? We might be driving next to one on the freeway. These things are tearing themselves apart through normal operation. So they need a lot of maintenance. And typically they are owned by companies that are making money with it, right? So when it goes down, they lose a lot of money. So kind of the mission is to maximize uptime for the companies that own this equipment, and then maximize profitability for most of the equipment is repaired by mom and pop shops. Believe it or not, most of our transportation and logistics ecosystem, the equipment is run by like small businesses owned by families. So helping them be more profitable. And then a nice byproduct of all of this is that if the easier we make it for them to maintain these things and do preventive care on them and so forth, yes, they make more money, the fleets make more money, but it's also that much safer to be sharing the roads with this stuff. Hopefully that makes sense.
Wonderful. Yes,
yeah.
It does. And you started the company, what year did you start it again?
We launched sales in 2015.
2015, okay.
Yep.
And with that, I want to welcome Shruti Gurudanti. Shruti is here from Televerde. She is the CEO and founder. Shruti, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? She was the winner of last year's Venture Madness. She won in 2020. And tell us a little bit about yourself and the inspiration for Televerde.
Shruti Gurudanti. I am the CEO, co-founder of Televerde. I want to start by saying I'm sorry for being a few minutes late. I kept signing up as a viewer, and I was like, that can't be right. I can't see myself. Televerde, we're on a mission to eliminate social isolation and loneliness amongst adults who are 65 plus. We do that by empowering senior centers or adult daycare centers by helping them efficiently and effectively create virtual hybrid programs for the older adult population that they service. So we help them save anywhere from 15 to 25 hours a week, or $2,000 to $4,000 a month when they are creating and delivering virtual programs to adults who are aging at home. So social isolation, loneliness is a $6.7 billion problem it's being spent annually on adults who feel isolated and feel lonely. They go back to the hospital sometimes only because that's their only interaction with another human being. And so we are bringing that community atmosphere to people at home by bringing that friendship and that connectivity in a very easy manner for this older adult population. We are a B2B SaaS company, however. We don't directly sell to older adults, but we partner with adult daycare centers and other senior centers, whether run by municipalities or nonprofits or by cities and governments and hospital systems. So we launched in 2018 was when this crazy idea came up. I started the company with my husband, who's my co-founder, because I saw my own grandparents suffer from isolation and loneliness. And it's devastating to see your own loved ones who are, smart, intelligent, and, they really taught you so much in life to just see that they're just watching TV the entire day and not having that connectivity. So we started this idea back in 2018. Today, we have a user reach of over 500,000 seniors. We've partnered with Peoria, with City of Chandler. We're very close to getting Glendale, very exciting. We have Banner Health as a client. Barrows Neurological is going to be a part of our clientele very soon. And so we're very excited with the partners that we have and the seniors we've impacted. I think just since COVID, we've had over 2,000 classes or programs that we've helped deliver. We've had over 100,000 interactions between older adults on our platform. We have a group of 80-year-olds who run a virtual art class today on our platform. We have book clubs run by seniors. So it's very exciting, and I'm very honored that we're able to bring this connectivity and engagement to folks who are aging at home so that they can age successfully at home.
You've really made an impact since I last saw you. So congratulations, nice growth.
Thank you.
So think back to when you were competing for Venture Madness and going through the process. Can you share with the audience what your experience was going through that? Let's talk a little bit about the mentoring process that you went through. When we interviewed each of you a few months back, all of you mentioned mentoring and the impact that it had on you. Can you share any particular advice, if you got advice from a specific mentor, or if you made a connection with somebody who then later, became a trusted advisor to you or anything like that? Share with us your mentoring experience, either in general or specific, what it meant to you and what you got out of it. And I'll change up the order this time. I'll go with Jacob. How about you talk to us about mentoring?
Sure, definitely. Well, I was fortunate enough to get involved with the Startup AZ Foundation relatively early on. And so that's been a major source of mentorship. And then also having worked at a successful startup company, PT, for a time and getting to know the founders and the leaders there, that was super helpful too. So I think we have this ecosystem that's growing here in town. That's been a great source of mentorship for me. And then the process of applying for Venture Madness and getting accepted and going through the iterations of sharing the slide deck and so forth. that was a great way to kind of like expose yourself to criticism and critique and stuff. It was a great process. So lots of mentorship going on. So I would definitely recommend join Startup AZ and also take advantage of the whole mentorship process that this competition fosters. So
great. Jamie, talk to us a little bit about mentoring or your experience.
I found it really helpful. We were preparing to go out for our seed round. We had done a pre-seed round, I guess 3 or 4 months prior to that. We were getting ready to go out for our seed round. And the mentoring process actually helped us refine our deck quite a bit, both for the pitch competition, but also for raising our first institutional round of capital. I remember Jonathan Curry giving me a lot of feedback and helping out. And I think it was Gregg Head that said, great pitch and everything, but you're missing like the punchline at the end. You need to say something, big at the end. And he's like, why don't you just like do something like, we're building Arizona's next billion-dollar company. And I grabbed it, and that's what I started saying every single time afterwards. And that's what I ended up saying at the end of the competition when I pitched at Venture Madness. So I would have never thought of saying it, kind of just that boldly and bluntly, but Gregg gave me yeah, go say that. That's what you need to say. You need to actually just put it out there. And that's what I did.
Yeah, as I recall, when you said that, there were a couple investors in the audience that were like, yeah, let's talk right after this. So I remember you saying that in the competition. Good line. So great, Gregg, talk to us a little bit about your mentoring experience or anything you picked up from it.
Well, a couple things about, I'll go, just specific to the Venture Madness experience. There were a couple things I picked up. In fact, if you might have heard how I introduced CampusLogic at the beginning. We do X for Y so that they can Z. So we do X is the thing we do, for Y, the customers is Y, and Z is the value we create for them. So, we sell a B2B software platform to colleges, universities, so that they can simplify the financial aid process. It sounds really simple, but I was really struggling to simplify the message about CampusLogic. Our financial aid is complex, it's regulated, and I would often get into the weeds of the regulatory environment in talking about our story. And you don't need to do that when you're telling an effective story. Most of the time, if people want to drill down, they can. But that came from Dave Bittner, specifically, that I got from him in that process. And then the mentoring team, specifically, one of the mentors I think is probably an attendee today. Tom Fulcher is on the call today. But I remember getting feedback in the mentoring session, preparing for the pitch, and I was listing all these words and phrases, and my mentoring team came back and said, so it sounds like you simplify, and it sounds like you have a mobile message. And so just getting down to single words was hard for me, harder than it should have been, but it's so valuable in storytelling to create simple messages and use fewer words to describe the value that we create in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes we feel like we've worked so hard and it's so complex what we've done that we need to explain it in a really complex way. But you're absolutely right. Keeping it simple, engaging in the storytelling component of why your product does what it does and how it can solve a problem. So I'm glad that you got that out of it. Shruti, can you talk to us?
One last thing I'll say is
Go ahead, Gregg.
Very, very rarely do you see founders that have built big companies that aren't pretty good storytellers. Storytelling is a key part of company building. And so learning how to tell a simple story and a compelling story is a skill set that takes work like any other skill set. But mentoring, good mentors can help us do that. Sorry, Shruti.
No, you're good. I agree with that. My experience was quite similar, actually, to everybody else's here. One of the things that I will say is that if you are looking to be a part of Venture Madness, you have to be open to feedback. You have to leave your ego out the door and just not try to bring that in. For me, I think personally, it was very helpful in just refining our message, because one of the things that I constantly had to deal with before Venture Madness was people constantly, what is this senior space? Like, what does it even mean? And so I think Venture Madness really helped us refine that and really make people understand what we're doing, for whom we're doing, and what really is the product that we're selling. For me, I think the biggest impact though, and maybe this is a little different from, Jacob, Jamie, and Greg here, but as a woman, it's different somehow, when you're trying to pitch and you're getting this feedback and all of that. So for me, I will say that Michelle with Digitile, she was actually really, really helpful in, making that bridge somehow of, providing good feedback, but in a way that was understandable to someone who's maybe not, like another white male adult in the room. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a different experience. And so I would constantly get things like, you're a little too arrogant, or you're a little too confident about your numbers and stuff like that. And she kept telling me that, it's okay, but you have to maybe pitch it in this way or that way. So it was very interesting to have like that one person who's a founder who's been through the same thing, and sort of mentoring and telling you that this is how you should talk about certain things, this is how you should pitch it. So I digress a little bit over there, but she was really one of those people who I really loved having as a mentor.
Yeah, we have many of our mentors that volunteer to help with the event have gone through the competition before. So they know what it's like, they know what worked and didn't work. So I'm glad that Michelle was able to provide some valuable advice to you. So talk to us about the conference itself and connections that you made with the investment world. We'd like to hear if you raised money as a direct result of connections you made at the conference, or an indirect result, or that connection led you to another connection. Let's start with Jamie this time.
Yeah, I think we made a lot of really good connections there. I would first say, I think a lot of people go into thinking that they're going to make connections from an investment VC perspective, which is definitely happened for us. But I think one of the bigger benefits that we actually got from it was from an employment brand perspective, and getting like future employees. And we had employees that applied to some of our open positions because they heard about us at Venture Madness. So that I consider to be just a huge win. From an investor perspective, we did meet quite a few investors. One of the investors that was a judge actually ended up leading our round a month later. So that was kind of cool that, he was there and he judged the pitch competition, ultimately ended up leading the round. And then afterwards, ended up actually staying after kind of the after party, and got tucked away with another investor for about an hour after the entire thing ended. And we're actually talking now about leading this round that we're doing. So some really good connections, both, I think early stage and later stage investors that we met out of there, and lots of follow-up conversations from that as well.
I shared, for those of you who were on the earlier panel that we did today, the discussion about how to apply for this year's Venture Madness. Karen pulled a stat for us that shows that 40% of the companies who presented did end up getting funding. So there's a good track record. And Jamie, it sounds like you had two investors that you were able to connect with there. Gregg, so think back when you were competing, what were your investor connections that you made, or other connections?
Yeah, let me, one thing I'll say for people that may not know this. On one hand, Venture Madness is not a capital raising event, but the reality is most companies that are hiring software developers, and before you have a lot of revenue, like you're consuming cash, like you're always raising capital in the early days. And so part of it is, if you get a little bit of momentum and people can see your momentum and hear your story and discover you and feel like, wow, that story really connects with something I want to invest in, then it ends up having a positive effects in capital raising you're already doing. So people shouldn't think that this is a capital raising event in and of itself where people are going to show up and give you money. But if you are in a capital raising process and you need capital to build your business, you want to get as much exposure as you possibly can. So one thing I would say about us is, I had people right after we won, I had a couple people come up literally and give us a check right then. So I gave the caveat up front, but literally say, because I'd been talking to them previously, like, I'm in for this much, here you go. And maybe it wasn't quite a check then, but it was, I'm in, like, I'll wire tomorrow or something like that. And one thing I'll say is that, you need to have momentum in your business, but you also need to have momentum in your story about, it's like the business is going well, but also you're maturing, you're attracting more people to your business as well. And so if you can get all those things to line up, and the Venture Madness experience lines up too, it's really powerful, and we experienced that. So we raised a couple $1 million over like a 2-year period leading up to Venture Madness. And then we raised another $2 million like 90 days after Venture Madness. So it really accelerated. And then in the following 60 days, another 3 million. And that was that whole piece of capital made up our 7 million Series A. But that was, again, it wasn't a capital raising event. There were good things going on in the business too, but we also got a lot of exposure. There's no way we could have gotten without Venture Madness. So hopefully that makes sense, that if you can get the growth in your business to line up with, your story, to line up with putting that story in front of people who want to hear it, that's really powerful.
Yeah. And thank you for keeping us clean on the legal front. Our attorneys, thank you for putting the disclosures out there. So Gregg, you raised quite a bit immediately after Venture Madness. For those in the audience who may not have read about you recently, how much have you raised total so far to date?
Just under 200 million, but another way to say it is some of us overcompensate for inadequacies we feel about in our own personal lives, like we have to raise capital to feel good about ourselves. So that's less a reflection of, some of that was we bought out other investors along the way, so not all of that went on the balance sheet of the company, but I've had great mentors in the capital raising process. Clay Mass was really influential on me. I'm an investor in a few companies in town, and I try to help them in their capital raising process because it's hard to do. And so we've been really fortunate, and there's a skill related to that too. But there's a lot of people willing to help you build that skill and become great at capital raising.
Right. Well, Gregg, you're very modest, but I think anyone could be proud of the traction that you've had. Jacob, talk to us about your investing experience.
Yeah, so when we were competing in Venture Madness, we had bootstrapped up to that point, and we weren't looking to raise any money. So Venture Madness ended up being a great introduction to me to a lot of investors, because afterwards, a bunch of them came up to me, and I got cards and I got emails later and so forth. So about a year later, when we were ready to raise, and we haven't raised nearly as much as Gregg has, he's far superior to us on that number. About a year later, we raised 23 million, and having the contacts from Venture Madness in kind of the pool, and Clay Mask's been a great mentor too, also in raising money, was very helpful. So I think it gave us the exposure where we started getting all these inbound inquiries from people who wanted to invest, were interested. So when it came time to start the process, we didn't have to go out and find anybody. We just took the list of who had come to us, and that kind of became who we approached and let know, hey, we're ready to raise. So it worked out really well. It was an unexpected benefit. We definitely weren't participating with the eye of raising money. It was a nice side benefit of participating.
Great. So like Jamie, you were able to build your brand with the conference, and it later led to investment in other partnerships. Great. Shruti, were you able to connect with any investors or raise any money from Venture Madness?
So when we entered Venture Madness, we were also, like Jacob, not looking at really raising any money, or it wasn't the purpose of Venture Madness wasn't to raise money, but definitely it did bring us really on the map. I will say that, you know, it brought us a lot of exposure. I had a lot of people come up to me and say that, you know, they're interested in what we're doing in this space. And then I continue to keep in touch with them. So now that we are raising and actively raising, all of those connections are certainly helpful. And I think what was really also good about Venture Madness for us was it gave me the experience and understanding of how to pitch. What is it that investors care about? Just really learn about that whole process, which I think as an operator, as a founder, even as a lawyer, I wasn't, you know, thinking about, and I didn't have that understanding. So it has certainly helped. And now that we're actively raising, it's been very helpful to have that experience and those connections. I will say that Venture Madness actually helped us get a lot of new clients, which in my experience was a real win-win, because that helped us grow, which then helps you, you know, look better in front of investors. And funny story, actually, I met Jacob in the hallway after one of his talks, I think. And I remember asking him that, hey, how long did you take to raise money? And he was like, have you thought about just inbound marketing and getting more inbound leads instead of raising money? Try that. I mean, instead of raising money first, let's try that. So it's something that stuck with me. And I don't know, Jacob, if you remember, but just something that I remember very clearly from Venture Madness. Instead of raising money, why don't we just build your customer base?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. And then go out and, yeah.
So while you were speaking, someone popped on the chat and talked about the diesel horn. Jacob, can you tell us the story about the horn that seems to become legendary now?
Well, I think there's now a decibel limit on the presentations, right? Because of that. This is not allowed anymore. I don't know. Somebody told me that, especially with the recency effect, you know, the psychology of, you tend to remember the first people and the last people. So I figured there had to be some kind of gimmick. So yes, there was a real diesel horn that I blew as part of the presentation. And I'm sure that hurt my chances of winning, not helped. But yeah, that happened. That was real.
And it was loud.
It was loud, and I'm sure my wife is super happy that somebody came up to me afterward and asked for it, and I gave it away. So I no longer own it. But yeah, don't do that, I think. Right, Randy? No longer allowed?
All right.
Okay.
So as far as the chat window, so we're on the Huba app and Zoom. The Q&A part of this is on the Huba app. So if you have questions for the panelists, in a little while here, we'll turn it over to audience questions. So put your Q&A in there. And then I think Kate's going to join us here in a little bit and share with us what Q&A is there. I can't see the Q&A right now, so I assume we have questions there.
We have 6 right now and growing.
Okay, wonderful. I have a few more questions for this panel before we turn it over to the audience questions. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the pandemic. So all of your companies were getting pretty good traction prior to the pandemic, and the pandemic impacted all of us, but some of your companies were very significantly impacted. I'd like to start with Jamie. Tell us about Qwick. Tell us about the last 12 to 14 months, what's happened and where you are now.
Yeah, so being in the hospitality, food and beverage space, as you can imagine, our business was impacted greatly. All of our business partners effectively just got shut down overnight. So we saw our revenue just completely turn off. It dropped 80% overnight. And it was a really bad time from just a timing perspective from our side, is because we had pushed out our Series A capital raise from the fall of 2019 to the spring of 2020. So we're out there raising just as our revenue just falls off a cliff. And so not only do we not have revenue to sustain the company, but we're running short on just capital, and our balance sheet is dwindling. So we ended up having to lay off 70% of the team and kind of go into conservation mode. And slowly but surely we fought our way out, and ended up having a whole lot of time on our hands to double down and improve the company because we weren't servicing as much revenue. But we improved the company, I think I'd say 2 to 3x over that year. Kept a core group of people. The talent density now is at an all-time high because we had to keep just the rock star players on the team. And but we went from 54 people down to 19 people, and ended up climbing out, had a solid Q3 and a great Q4. Ended up beating revenue slightly in 2020 over 2019, which was remarkable after it shut off entirely. And now, you know, I should say I thought that COVID was the absolute worst thing that could have ever happened to the company, and it almost eliminated us as a company. We were, you know, thankfully our current investors put some more money in. It was our COVID round, as I call it. But we raised a little more money and got through the year. And I think now the universe is repaying us. We are now doing more than twice as much revenue as we ever did before COVID, and growing just tremendously. We're growing an average of 85% month over month now, so far in 2021. And yeah, all that hard work and grind over the last year and going through that valley of death has come back. And now we're growing and hiring, and we have more demand than we know what to do with.
Wow, nice job. Let me follow that up with, so it's pretty extraordinary. You had to lay off 70% of your team. Tell us what the one thing that you did during the pandemic that you're most proud of in terms of your company.
We took care of our employees, and you know, both the employees that we had to let go, even though we were running out of cash, we gave everyone a generous severance, and kept them on healthcare, because it wasn't a time to be without health insurance. And then, you know, for our current employees that stayed with us, not only did we ask them to stay, we asked them to take a pretty big salary cut, and but in exchange, we were able to increase their equity ownership in the company quite a bit. I'm really proud of the team that we have, and how they rallied throughout all of it, and not only, you know, decided to stay, but took a huge salary cut, some of them up to 75% salary cut in exchange for more equity. And they pulled it together and pulled us through, you know, hopefully the worst time in our company's history. I hope we never go through something that drastic again.
Well, that's great that you're able to take care of them on the health insurance side too. That's a big factor for most folks. I'm going to open it up to the other panelists. You want to talk a little bit about what the pandemic did to your business and what you had to do as a result? Anyone want to jump in there?
I can jump in. So we were fortunate that our customers who maintained the vehicles that were like still distributing food and toilet paper and stuff like that, for the most part, were okay depending on the sector, but they were still super scared to sign up with software. So we had to get really creative, and it forced us to, you know, rethink our sales and marketing strategy and refine it. And it was nothing close to what Jamie had to go through, but we were still able to hit our budget growth numbers and so forth in 2020 because everybody got creative. And it was just really, it was hard. It didn't just happen, but it was really cool to see how, you know, how ingenious people can get when faced with adversity, if that makes sense. And I know, you know, increasing sales numbers, is that really such a virtuous thing? It was a problem that needed to be solved and to be tackled, and it was a pretty satisfying experience. So we were fortunate enough to be in the right segment, industry, and so forth to be pretty okay. But dealing with consumer confidence levels basically became a challenge, and I think we were a lot stronger for it. So that was our experience.
COVID was actually very interesting for us because we had to completely pivot outside of senior housing. So prior to COVID, and in fact, when we pitched at Venture Madness as well, we were focused on selling to institutional housing where seniors go and, you know, retire. with COVID, what had happened is, well, 33% of the COVID deaths are in senior housing. So a lot of our clients were decimated. They actually shut down, they closed business. So we had to like figure out what the hell we're going to do now and move sort of quickly. So what we sort of started seeing slowly and then grew was that a lot of senior centers were interested in keeping people engaged and active at home. And they didn't have a lot of the infrastructural challenges that senior housing has. Like they don't have the right internet, they don't have enough staff, they don't have devices. And quite frankly, not everyone is also focused on keeping seniors engaged when they're battling for life and death. So when we pivoted outside to senior centers, we saw a way better fit. Then we started seeing hospital systems approach us, and then health plans, which was, so COVID was actually really good for us as a learning experience and helped us grow those number of users that we are able to serve and impact today. So it's been actually a very interesting but a good time as a company for us.
So I heard you give your presentation at Venture Madness and the focus on the senior centers, but you mentioned you've got a lot of business now from hospital systems. How are the hospital systems using you?
Yeah, so hospital systems also have the same intent of keeping older adults social at home, and so that they don't come back to the hospital system and cause rehospitalization costs. So what they are doing is they are creating these virtual environments so that they can continue to stay in touch with folks who've our stroke patients, our Parkinson's patients, or maybe Alzheimer's patients. And they have, support groups, they have exercise programs, they have educational classes, all of this being done for these individuals now at home so that they don't miss an appointment of going to that that class or going to that nutrition session or doing something like that. And they still continue to be active and engaged. So when we step in, we bring in our class management software that helps them really take out a lot of the rote tasks and redundant tasks that you have to keep up with when you have just a video conferencing platform. You don't have the ability to track attendance metrics. What is the behavior of a user? What is their user journey? What classes are they attending? What has been the benefit of that? Now with the more one-stop shop solution on the back end, the hospital systems know, okay, this person is attending X, Y, and Z programs, but they've not been doing any exercise classes. Let me try to give them more exercise classes so that they're doing better as a holistic as a holistic wellness solution. So we started, so Banner Health, for example, they also have senior centers. A lot of us didn't know, I didn't know Banner Health has senior centers, but they do. And the goal for these senior centers are to keep these adults from going back to the hospital system over and over again. So they get a hot meal, they get exercise classes, they get socialization programs. Now all of that is being done online as well, so that folks who are not able to get to the Banner Senior Center can still be a part of that Banner Olive Branch Senior Center at home. So hopefully that helps shed a little light on how this sort of world operates.
Yeah, it's certainly changed in the last year. Gregg, I think you had a follow-up comment.
Well, higher education's been going through digital transformation for a long time, and I think COVID has accelerated digital transformation in many industries. Ours is similar. We had a small slowdown in when schools were trying to figure out, how do I get students off my campus? That's all they were focused on in March and April of last year. So it was hard to get deals that were ready to close done, and it was hard to for that. But other than a 2 or 3 month kind of slowdown there, things kind of picked back up in the back part of the year, and things are going well. The one thing I was going to say that's non-COVID related, and the reason I wanted to go last is I know I can think of an example of a hard thing that Jacob had to work through a few years ago. I met with Jamie during last year when the world fell apart for him, and I know Shruti has struggled to with different times in her business. I've had huge struggles in our business, like I call them near-death experiences, where the business almost goes away multiple times. And when you, like the idea of laying people off, like you add and you lay people off. I think sometimes one of the things that a lot of founders don't realize is that is so normal. In fact, it would be strange if you don't experience that. in your company building experience, it would be unusual, I think, to not think that. So I know that doesn't always give a lot of comfort. You still have to go through the struggle, but COVID was an example that was really like much harder for some companies than others in Jamie's story. But every founder in their company building experience has these really rough early experiences of just trying to make payroll, trying to keep the team together, trying to get customers to believe you can deliver. They're just hard. And so I know that a lot of people listening are founders and building a company right now, and encourage you to hang in there and recognize this tough things you're going through are pretty normal, really.
Yeah, it's never easy when you have to lay off people. And I've had to do it in many organizations as well. And it never gets easier. It never does. You're dealing with humans. You're making decisions that are impacting their lives. And even though you know it's the right thing for your company, it's just a hard thing.
The hardest part is actually when you internally are, struggling so much and you internally are so scared, but you have to keep this stoic face in front of everybody else and make them feel confident. I think that's the toughest part, because like it happened to me where internally I'm like, I am freaking scared. Like, I don't know, will someone make me feel comfortable? So I think that's been, I would say that that's the toughest thing.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be human if you didn't go through those emotions. I one time had to lay off 60% of the team because we were eliminating a division. And as I brought the group together before we met with people individually, I had to tell them, today's going to be a tough day. And a lot of the people sitting next to you aren't going to be with the company. And as I was telling them, I started getting teary-eyed, and then I was embarrassed. I was like, wait, I have to be professional. But as a result of them seeing that I was human and I was impacted by this as much as they were, it made the conversations not easier, but I guess it made them more understanding. But it's never fun, never is. So let's talk about the entrepreneurs that are out there. What is the number one piece of advice that you'd give to the entrepreneurs, startups, and growth companies who are preparing to apply for Venture Madness or getting ready for any other pitch competition? What's the number one piece of advice that you would give them as they go into that?
Struggling with my mute button. And by the way, I'm on site at a truck repair facility, so I apologize for my interesting background. Not as interesting as Jamie's. I think what I would say, I mean, I'm biased, so I'll just say it. I mean, I'm biased toward bootstrapping. I know this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Venture Madness, but I think it's becoming easier and easier to bootstrap a company and to follow kind of a lean approach. So there's that. And I think that the whole concept of like install your own investor in the company in the form of early revenue is, I think it's pretty good advice. Maybe that's just the CPA in me. The other thing would be that it's great to apply and win Venture Madness or pitch competition, but just remember that that's not why you're in business. So whether you win or not, or whether you even participate in any of these things or not, doesn't really impact or matter in the long run. I think that you can really benefit from doing it as long as it's aligning with what you should be doing anyway. So for example, in my case, we had never pitched, and so it forced me to come up with a PowerPoint presentation, which I'm not a fan of PowerPoint. I think it's a terrible way of communicating things. And I think my first submitted pitch deck was like 1 slide long, and I thought I could get away with it, and I couldn't. And so there was this back and forth with the mentors, and I ended up with a pretty good pitch deck. So when it came time to raise, it was really helpful. So I would just say, when it comes to the competition or any competition, focus more on running your business than on winning pitch competitions. But if you can get a benefit that will kind of hit 2 birds with 1 stone, if that makes sense, then go for it. And there's a lot of benefits to be had to participating. So there's my 2 cents.
I don't know what advice I would give besides just believe in yourself. To be honest, I mean, just keep going, just persevere. It's going to be a shitstorm. I don't have any other way to explain it. It's going to be rough. But, just if you really truly believe that you can do it, then you absolutely can do it, and you'll figure out a way to do it. And I didn't realize that about myself, but you always figure out a way to get it done. So don't, and there'll always be people telling you that, oh, it's a stupid idea, or, you know, oh, this is not going to work, or, oh my God, this market's too small, or like, you know, I don't understand this business, or whatever it is. But, you know, if you truly are figuring it out and you know how it works and you understand how you're going to get there, then just believe in yourself and just go for it. Because if you don't go for it, I think you're going to regret it later in life. So I don't know if that's helpful advice, but just really don't wait for the right moment for that one person to tell you you're doing the right thing. Just take that first step and just keep going with it.
Can I just say one thing? Shruti's absolutely right. It seems like in most companies, in the founding, there's always this dark period where nobody really believes that you can do it. And maybe they act polite around you, but it's kind of awkward. And we've probably all experienced that with other people too, right? That idea will never work. They don't have the chops and so forth. So I definitely went through that. People wouldn't return my texts, and it was awkward when they're asking me, do you have sales yet? And I'm like, no, not yet. So it just happens.
Yeah.
So great advice.
Jamie, advice that you would give?
I think whether you actually get selected to pitch, or whether you pitch, or whether you win, doesn't really matter. I think what's important is to go through the process, and I think it forces you to think about your business in maybe a different way than you would otherwise. I think that's the whole process with, you know, raising capital as well, is it makes you think big, makes you think long term, and makes you think about, like, what are you doing longer term? What's your vision? How are you going to get there versus just, you know, executing day to day. Executing day to day is critically important. It's, you know, execution's only everything, but you also have to be able to think about, like, where else you're going and what you're going to do and how you're going to get there. So I think just the thought process that you have to go through to apply or pitch is really good. And then I'd say check your ego at the door, and, like, take an opportunity to have people poke holes in your pitch and your company. It is the best free advice you're ever going to get. And, you know, people should charge money for sitting there and examining your company and consulting with you. But if someone's willing to actually sit there and poke holes in your company, don't try to defend it. Like, open your ears and listen. And, you know, maybe they don't understand, and, you know, maybe they do, but maybe they're actually looking at it differently than you have ever before. And take the advice from someone that's been there and done that and isn't in the weeds day to day. It's, you know, I think everyone looks at, you know, the competition itself, but I think the journey to get to that competition is the most valuable thing.
Any advice from you, Gregg?
Yes, I mean, this is similar to what I said earlier, but I'll, you know, I think we're focused right here on winning, how to engage with a pitch competition. Venture Madness is amazing. I love it. It's a huge thing. It's a huge, it's a unique thing to Phoenix. Other people have pitch competitions, but it's a great community resource. But I will say that pitching in general is really the skill to develop. I mean, this is a pitch competition, but you're always going to be pitching. You're pitching investors. You're pitching, you're trying to convince talent to come join you on your journey. Like investor, you're trying to get investors to believe, to fund your dream. You're trying to get other executives, other people to come join you to pursue your dream. And when you think about it as a founder, you are always pitching people on, hey, this is what we're doing and this is where I'm going. So learning to be good at pitching is way more than just a single pitch competition, or pitch competitions even more broadly. My acronym that I always share for this to remember, because I can't remember anything if it's not a 3 or 4 letter acronym. I have no ability to remember here. And I didn't make this up. I read this somewhere, and I would give attribution if I could remember where I read it. But the acronym is RIBS. And when you're pitching, you want to make your story relevant. So it's got to mean something. So in our case, we're solving problems around student debt, which is it's relevant today. Inevitable is the I, so relevant and inevitable. And the reason inevitable matters is you want people to understand, hey, this is going to happen. Do you think every financial aid interaction is going to be mobile and personalized in the future? I mean, this is going to happen. So it's got to be relevant. It's got to be inevitable. It's got to be believable. we know this industry, we've got experience doing this. We are the team that's going to do it. It's got to be believable. And I can't say, hey, drones are going to deliver financial aid tomorrow, right? That's not believable. But you've got to make this believable. And the last thing, you've got to make it simple. So relevant, inevitable, believable, and simple. And if you can make your pitch in general fit those things, a lot of things will go your way, whether you're pitching potential employees, potential investors, or for a pitch competition. That's a good framework for me to always remember how to keep my story focused on those things.
Yeah, so ribs, I like that. I hadn't heard that that acronym before.
And on top of that, ribs are delicious. On top of that, ribs are delicious.
And tacos too. So, all right. I think we're going to move to audience questions here in just a minute. So I assume Kate is listening and we can queue her up. But before we go to that, I have one final question for one of our panelists, because I keep seeing chats about this. Jamie, you're going to have to tell us, what is the inspiration for the wall art behind you?
So my favorite Christmas movie is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. And this is, let's see, Cousin Eddie. And this is when he shows up and he's draining his RV into the sewer. And he's out there with a beer in the morning and he's like, shitter's full. And so I love that movie. And I saw that come up on some feed and I bought it. And I was so happy when it showed up to the house. And my wife, Lauren, said there's absolutely zero chance this is going in our home. And so here it is at the Qwick office.
Great. Lauren is a smart woman. All right, with that, Kate, I assume we have some questions from the audience.
We have many. Let's go. When do you know you're ready to pitch? We are building our MVP and have validation from our demo, but no paid usage or traction.
I'll jump in. Oh, Jamie, go ahead. No, go ahead, Jamie. You got something?
I was going to say, I think, I think to build on what Jacob said at some level is, ensure that someone's actually willing to trade you a dollar bill for what you have to sell, and make sure that there's some market validation. I understand that some concepts require a whole lot more capital to get to that stage of like pharmaceuticals or something like that. But I think in the world of software, I always love to see traction before you go out and seek investment or pitch. Make sure that someone's actually willing to give you some money for it. It could turn into actually being a funding source, and you don't need to pitch or raise, as Jacob said. But for me, I at least want to see that there's some traction, some product market fit, and that it's something that's actually out there able to make some money before you go pitch the idea. I don't want to put any of my own money behind something if I don't know that it can actually go and make money itself.
I think that's good advice. I would also say that most founders, and maybe I'm projecting because I've definitely done this, but sometimes we don't release product until we let great be the enemy of good. And part of the way, you got to get your stuff out in the wild and get people using this so you can get real feedback on what works and what doesn't work. So I think Jamie's right with respect to raising capital, or maybe even in some cases a pitch competition. But I think that you can kind of dial down your pitch to the right audience and get your product out. Usually nobody ever feels like they get their product out too soon. Like you got to get market feedback going sooner rather than later. So I sometimes see founders that are in the same place for a year or two, like they're just waiting. I got to get this last thing fixed. I got to get this thing going here. And part of what the process is inherently involved in making mistakes. And when you're building a company, you have to try, which means you're going to fail, and you're going to try again, you're going to fail. And that's what allows you to actually find product market fit. So I think Jamie's right, but I also think the faster you can get any sort of feedback, the better. And usually we wait too long to do that.
Greg, I'll double down on that and tell you that I 100% believe in lean startup, and like what we built with Qwick to actually see if someone could, give us money for what we had was a complete facade. Like it was not a technology website. We had zero app. There was actually nothing behind the scenes. It looked really pretty, but it did nothing. And it was all smoke and mirrors and people behind the scenes punching keys to actually make everything work. But we tested it right? And to see if it worked. We built the entire Qwick in 3 weeks and then went out and tried to sell it. So go out there, see if someone will do it. If it doesn't work, pivot, try something else, and keep trying until you do find someone that is willing to give you money for what you're going to do. But do not spend a year. Do not spend a year of your time or your life or your money getting to that stage. Find if someone will give you money for your product very, very early. And if they won't, it's not worth pitching. It's not worth pursuing.
We had Eric Reese.
Running lean is another good one. I second what Jamie said.
We had Eric Reese on last night, and he gave us a lot of great feedback and advice. And that interview will be coming out. If you follow Phoenix Startup Week, you can catch that. The next question is around planning. Would you budget? How would you budget resources and time to participate in this or other competitions? Shruti, do you have any input on that?
Well, I would say that I pitched a lot in 2020 because that was how we were raising money, short of going out and finding investors. So truthfully, I pitched, if anyone was giving $1,000, I went and pitched. So if you're looking to not have to dilute, but still, find ways of funding yourself in addition to your revenue, I think pitches are a great way to do it. And it also helps you in refining your story. But more importantly, it gets you to meet people who otherwise would, you would not probably have that opportunity. So of course, don't make that your full-time job. But if you are sort of in that CEO position, then your job is raising money. And one of the things that I used was pitch competitions. So if you think that that's your strategy right now, go for it. But be very open to criticism, be very open to failing, which is like not winning the competition, but, just leave that as it is and move forward. So, but what's the worst? I mean, you lose, that's it. So pitch, refine your story, and, just get your word out. That's your initial marketing free of cost. So why not? I don't see any reason why you shouldn't do it unless it's taking up 100% of your time and away from your business.
There's only 90 hours in the work week, so you've got to budget your time carefully.
This next question is going to build off what Shruti just said. Any advice on overcoming the fear of speaking in front of others? Jacob, do you have any?
Yeah, practice in the mirror over and over and over again. It's amazing how well that works. And I guess in 2021, make some TikTok videos, perhaps. But it's not as scary as you think if you've never spoken in front of a bunch of people, especially if you're well rehearsed and you can kind of get into the zone like that. It's doable. I'm definitely an introvert by nature, and I do fine. So practicing and getting your pitch down. So it's literally a memorized thing that you are standing up there and saying, which is not as hard to do as you think. I think it's doable. Anybody can be Steve Jobs if they're on stage if they practice enough.
Gregg, you've got a thing, right? Isn't your thing that you do a lot of talking, but you never watch yourself speak? Is that what I heard you say before?
Well, I think if you recorded who's talked the most on this, it's probably me. So clearly I love to hear myself talk. I mean, that's so I don't know if I'm the best person here to give advice.
I'll chime in on one.
And practice watching Gregg over and over until I feel confident about myself. Then I go out there and do it.
Nice. I'll add one comment to that one. When I launched this crazy place called Galvanize in 2017, I had no idea how the community was going to react. And all of a sudden I found myself having to be on a stage in front of people every day, doing an introduction and telling the Galvanize story. And I was petrified at the beginning. And the one thing that I did every time I got up on the stage in the amphitheater here is I made a conscious effort to speak louder than I was comfortable with. And what it did is it physically gave me the confidence. So if I was not confident, I just spoke louder, and it was like, okay. And it built up. And as I did that more and more, it became more comfortable. So my one tip is speak louder than you're comfortable with, and it will help build your confidence.
So to add to that, sorry, go ahead, Gregg.
No, go ahead. I was going to ask you a question. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that another trick is, and I don't know if there are any dancers out there who are listening, but if you look straight ahead, like if you look straight ahead, you're not going to see anybody because everyone's usually sitting down or like, they're doing something else. So look straight ahead and just pitch like you're pitching to nobody, to an empty room. And automatically, I think you'll feel a lot better. So because it's going to be likely dark and people are sitting, just look straight at nothing. And if it's a Zoom video thing, then just make it small, like that one box and just the speaker where you can just see yourself, and then just, it's like you're pitching to yourself. So I don't know if those tricks help, but certainly helped me.
I heard the three of you pitch, Shruti, Jamie, and Jacob. Were you guys nervous? Because you didn't seem nervous to me, but were you nervous?
Yes.
Absolutely. Before I went up, I was actually feeling very, very, very nervous, and so I went to the back of the room, like the back of the entire room, and just sat there and just did some box breathing, like the whole box breath thing, and just like focused on breathing and just like calm myself down and just told myself, hey, listen, you have nothing to lose, right? There's absolutely nothing to lose. If you get up there and you don't win, you've not lost anything. So just go up there and do your best.
Yeah, likewise. I went back to when nobody was standing and I just talked to myself, and I had that Eminem moment where it's like, all right, it's like one shot, you got to do it. Like, this is it. And so that's helpful. So have a pump up song that helps you like get, going, and use that. But I was very nervous. I agree.
I would say mostly when we talk about the things we care about deeply, the passion comes through, and that compensates for a lot of nervousness. And so what I did observe with the three of you and other people that have pitched that I've seen pitch, when they're talking about the thing that they care the most about and they've shaped their pitch around that, I just find that to be really powerful. And that kind of comes through on top of the nerves, or it like supersedes the nerves. So I think if you've got passion for what you're doing, it can carry you through a lot of hard times.
Also say just real quick, I did not expect to win. I was genuinely surprised when I won. When I did it, there was 2 levels. Absolutely surprised. And so when I was presenting, I didn't expect to win. I was just up there to do my best, and that was the benefit that I was going to walk away with. So for what it's worth, I didn't feel like it was as cool or whatever as all the other presenters, but I got up anyway.
Okay, let's move to the next question, which is helpful resources for storytelling besides practice. Anybody have any for there?
I'm terrible at storytelling, so not me.
Okay, Gregg.
Well, I think you can go read about the hero's journey. If you Google anything about the hero's journey, there's it lays out the construct of storytelling. But when I say storytelling, I actually really just mean telling your story, which usually is about why. It's usually about why I care about this and why this matters. And so, more than anything, I think just, it's some simple things. It's why this matters. It's kind of the who, what, where, why, kind of normal stuff. So why does this matter to the world? Why does this matter to me? Why am I spending all my time doing this thing? And people want to hear that more than anything, because again, you're trying to invite people to join in multiple capacities, whether it's capital or advising or employees. You're trying to invite people to help, you pursue your mission here. And so it's a really personal thing. So I think your pitch should be pretty personal, and it should be a little bit vulnerable whenever you're pitching. It should be authentic. So I don't think there needs to be a roadmap exactly for storytelling, as long as you kind of focus on the why and a little bit on how you're going to do this to help people understand the vision. But more than anything, you got to be a little bit vulnerable, and people sniff out authenticity. So people want to join something that's authentic, that speaks to them.
Anybody else on storytelling? Okay.
Gregg,
sorry, go ahead. I was just going to share that I struggled a lot with sharing my personal experience. I'm generally a pretty private person about, stuff that happens within, your personal life. But I was really pushed, and a lot because of Venture Madness, to share why we started Televerde, why we're doing what we're doing, and, how my grandparents impacted my life. And so that's when I really learned that people really connect and can resonate and think of you as a human being when, you're talking more about why truly that there's that human element. So I struggled a lot with it, just having to share, because it's an experience, right? Like, you're thinking back of all the not so great times that someone has gone through, but, it propelled you to start something. So just try to find the most comfortable way that you can share that story about your personal experience, but do share it, because it really, you never know, someone else might be feeling the same thing, and now they have that comfort to feel that there's someone else who had that shared experience. So just try to figure out what that personal story capacity that you have to share, but do share it.
And I'll add to that. So I was in the mentor group when Shruti was going through the competition. And when she made her first pitch to our group, all the feedback was, okay, she's really smart, she's sharp, she's an attorney, she's got a brilliant mind, knows how to run a business, but why is she doing this? And we were like, why? So when Shruti came back in, we said, why are you doing this? And she started to tell us in private the story about her grandparents. We're like, you need to include that. The audience and the investors, they need to understand why this is a passion for you. And it made a huge difference. And by her next pitch, she had included that in her story. So I remember that moment, and it made a huge difference.
This question is for you, Diana, and anybody else that has an opinion. We have an established prototype and are scaling to pilot. We have pre-revenue, however. Does this put us at a significant disadvantage for Venture Madness? And then a follow-up question to that, is it just for SaaS companies?
Does it put you at a significant disadvantage? And I'm looking at Karen, our executive director, right now, and we're both saying, no, it doesn't put you at a disadvantage. We look at the applications, the selection panel looks at the applications, and we put them into the appropriate category. So absolutely, you should apply. Even if you're pre-revenue or you're very early stage revenue, apply and tell the story and let us understand what your growth plan is and let investors understand that. But I would encourage you to apply. And on that note, applications are open right now through June 3rd at investsouthwest.org. So if you haven't applied yet, check out the application process, and there's an instructional video that will walk you through step-by-step how to apply on the platform.
This question is for Jacob. Can you please share with us who you would consider as the potential vertical partners in the digital medical record space in the next 12 months?
Potential vertical partners in the digital medical record space in the next 12 months. I don't know. I've been so heavy on the commercial repair side of things for the past 5 or 6 years that I just couldn't tell you. I'm in the wilderness right now. Someday I'll be back. You probably know better than me.
You're focused. Sorry. No worries.
So focused.
That's good. This question is for Shruti. Are you seeing interest from individual families to use your programs? How do we keep people engaged and allow dignity at home?
Yeah, we do see a lot of people trying to be a part of the community, but we unfortunately don't have a direct-to-consumer model right now, so we're not able to really sell, out to individual subscribers. But if they are associated somehow with the senior center that partners with us, then yes, they can be a part of the community. So if you know anyone, so whoever asked that question, if you know anyone who wants to be a part of this community, please reach out to me. We'll figure out a way how they can be a part of the platform and find that engagement. So just as some statistics, 92% of older adults want to age at home. They don't want to go into institutional housing. I guarantee you, 92% of people on this call also want to age at home, and they don't want to go into institutional housing if they're given an opportunity. So how do we keep our older adults engaged and social? That's a very important and big question to ask, because longevity is, today people are living up to, 98, 97 years old. So they want to stay active and engaged longer at home. So let's think about how we can really bring that connectivity and, use technology in a very easy way, so that they're also feeling like they're a part of the community, and not, technology has to be built for them as well, instead of having 3 remotes for 1 TV. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, why do you need that? Let's try to make it easier so people can stay connected, So it's a great question. And again, if you have anyone who wants to subscribe to the community, please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to make them part of this growing micro community that we have.
Great. The last question I have, we actually have 2, and I'm going to combine them into one. So this is your experience as a founder. How did you transition from doubt to confidence about your venture? And then what do you do when you have investors that are looking for your flaws or resistant to your message? How do you handle that? Let's start with you, Jamie.
I like the quote from Elon Musk that being an entrepreneur sometimes like staring into the abyss and chewing glass. Sometimes you're going to doubt yourself. You just got to kind of keep going through, keep doing it. Don't give up. I think the biggest difference between those companies that succeed and fail are the ones that, take those challenges, those dips, and they give up, and they don't continue to push forward and believe in themselves. But you got to surround yourself with a good network as well, because I can tell you, I've doubted myself many, many times. And you just got to keep moving forward. As far as investors, finding flaws, I think that's, part of what an investor's job is to do is they look for reasons to say no. Know that you're going to get a whole lot more no's than yeses when you're fundraising. And, take every time that they ask you something, or they kind of pick at something, as how can I craft my message differently or better, or address that to that next investor. Use it as a constant iteration, just like you would selling. Anytime someone has an objection to why they don't want to buy your X, then find a way to sell around that objection, or through that objection. Investors are the same thing. You're just selling your company instead of selling your product. So look at that as just people saying no to buying your product. People may say no to buying your company, and that's part of the game.
Gregg, any feedback here?
On the doubt side, this is kind of alluded to, but one of the things that's really hard with self-doubt is when we have to keep it to ourselves. And so you need to have your posse. You got to have your team. You got to have your, like, who can I talk to about this? People that know the struggle, other founders, like people that know, and you got to be open and honest with them. So that's something you've got to build. If you don't have that, you've just got to go build that, where you've got a network where people can help shoulder your burden with you. And then because everybody experiences that. That's part of the experience. On the investor side, one of the things that's new for a lot of us, and I'm making an inference that this question is coming from someone who's like really early on, and they're looking for early angel money. I might be wrong, but I think I'm making that inference here. And one thing that a lot of us don't realize is it's going to take a long time and a lot of meetings for most of us. That's not true for everybody, but I met with a couple hundred different investors to get our Series A done. I had more than that, actually, because I had 50 investors, 50 individual check writers at the point of our Series A, and probably one of the most complex, convoluted rounds of capital ever raised. And so, and I was like having a breakfast meeting, and then I was having my post-breakfast meeting, and then I'd have like my lunch meeting and my post-lunch meeting. I put all on a weight during the capital raising process. But it takes a lot, and you need to treat it like a funnel, just like you would in a sales funnel. You got to build your pipeline and keep working it through and move through. And you have to cast a wide net sometimes. So I always look at when people say no, Like you just need to go get a few more people. Like keep adding to the funnel and keep pressing. All the while you're still building your business and your story will get better. And always get feedback. I always got feedback. Hey, what didn't you like about what you heard? And people will tell you, hey, well, I don't think I don't think you have the right team. I don't think it's a problem that's interesting to solve. So my pitch got better the next time I did it. So anyway, I would say you got to cast a wide net, get real feedback, apply the feedback, and keep moving through the process.
Great. Thank you so much, Diana, for putting together this panel and for all the work you're doing in our ecosystem. And thank you, Jacob, Shruti, Jamie, and Gregg for your time. We know you're busy, and thank you so much for contributing to the generosity in our community and for educating everyone. We hope you stay well, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.